Hi, and welcome to the Scenic podcast. This is the show for building a successful and sustainable business on your terms. My name is Jen, and I'm a rebranding sociologist with a soft spot for rhubarb pie. Each week, I'll strive to expand your branding, business expertise, and mindset capacity. I'm so excited you're here, and now let's get into today's episode.
Sandra Mikhail is an internationally known accredited practicing dietitian and the founder and director of Nutrition A to Z by Sandra Mikhail. She holds a Bachelor of Nutrition and Dietetics and a Master of Advanced Studies in Nutrition and Health. And she is a member of the Dietitians Australia. She also holds a sports nutrition diploma by the International Olympics Committee. And with her experience spanning well over a decade, Sandra's main areas of specialty are digestive disease, sports nutrition, eating disorders, and corporate health, working with local and multinational brands such as the Swiss football club FCZ, Cheese, Mercedes, Johnson & Johnson, and Adobe, to just name a few. Sandra's passion for and work in gut health created a movement of normalizing poo talk, shedding light on topics that you might find yourself secretly Googling about. As a mental health advocate, her workshops and articles on stress and nutrition have gained popularity internationally, where she was personally invited by Arianna Huffington to contribute to her global platform Thrive, and has appeared on CNN Money to talk about nutrition and stress on the workplace. Sandra, welcome to the Scenic podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. Yay!
Thank you.
So before we start our chat today, a full disclosure, I'm a client of Sandra's. She's helping me with, just feeling better, through all of my chronic health issues and journey. And she's quite the different poop lady. She, I don't know, her advice is totally different from mainstream diet suggestions and advice and diet TikToks. So I am super excited to have you here.
Likewise. Thank you so much for entrusting me as well.
Yeah. So that people kind of get an idea of who you are. Can you briefly walk us through your story, like how you started, how you got to where you're today? What were the pivotal crossroads, the big moments for you?
So to cut a long story short, I mean, you called me the poop lady. So people are probably going, what do you do? So actually, I'm a clinical dietitian by trade. I have been a clinical dietitian for way over a decade now. It all started off in Australia. So this is where I got all my qualifications. I went to university there. A little side note, I'm a very big mix in terms of cultural background. So I was born in Australia, because people are probably going, I can't really figure out your accent, because there's probably a little bit of Australian thread in there. But I was born in Australia and I grew up in Dubai in the 80s and 90s. So basically I grew up in the desert with water, and we grew up by the beach. It was beautiful.
Nice.
A simple life. So life was between Australia and Dubai for a very, very long time. Born in Australia. In terms of cultural background, I am Greek Egyptian, so I've got Greek Egyptian blood. So you can imagine what it's like when it comes to family gatherings, where it revolves literally around food all the time, every time.
Loud and food. God. Yeah.
Yep. And I am the daughter of a gastroenterologist. So my dad is a gut specialist. I don't know if I told you that.
No, I have no dad. That makes total sense though. Okay.
Right?
Now I'm like, oh.
People would think I was born into this. And the funny thing is I remember a lot of these kind of childhood dinner table conversations growing up revolved, my father on the phone mentioning things like rectal bleeding, anal fissures, peg tubes, and we'd be totally fine with that. That was like a normal dinner table talk.
Yeah. I mean, that's good, right? Because there's so much stigma around, I don't know, anything to do with your gut,
absolutely,
pooping and just farts. It's just mad.
Normal bodily, physiological functions are taboo to talk about. So basically that was just as normal, and then just to see the horror on our friends' faces, and then a friend of mine would turn around, she was like, "Did your father just say anal or rectum?" I was like, "Yeah,
it's just totally. A biological descriptor."
Exactly. So basically this whole side of, I'm going to call it medicine, was extremely appealing and interesting. So that's what I kind of grew up with. And then obviously this whole side of nutrition was also extremely appealing because a big part of my life did revolve around food. You know, we love food. Food is social. Food was everything for us. But for me, it was really interesting to see the relationship between medicine and food together and how that works. So I decided to study nutrition and dietetics in Australia, and a lot of my background is just clinical work. So actually, after graduating, I worked. One of my first jobs was in a mental health center. So basically, working with people with a variety of, let's say, mental health conditions like schizophrenia, eating disorders, bipolar disease, clinical depression, and so on. And it was really interesting back then. I'm talking this now way over a decade ago, how important nutrition was alongside the medical management of these conditions. And then I just went on to working in different areas. So I was on the oncology ward in hospital, so working with cancer patients. And then I decided to move to Dubai en route to Europe. I decided to go back to Dubai, just to, go save up some money. And my plan was to end up in Spain. Well, that clearly didn't happen. I'm here in Switzerland 10 years later.
Thank God.
Yeah, I'm here. So a lot of clinical work throughout the years, specializing in different areas, but this whole area of gut health was central to everything. So I worked in the intensive care unit, but also a lot of people post gut, certain gut surgeries. And then I ended up, when was it? I was thinking I was 25. At 25, I was running a whole hospital department, the nutrition dietetics hospital department. And actually, this is when I had my first burnout at 25. And, being 25, people, I'm not going to say don't take you seriously, but because you are considered young and you're so cute and small and tiny running a big hospital department, like, what are you doing
Look at you. Do you want to have a lollipop? Yeah,
exactly. It was it was very much like that. And I think it's just not about proving to them that I can do this, but it's probably proving to myself as well. And I would say that moment kind of brought the end of any clinical work or working in hospitals, because I just could not do the politics of it all. And during that time, I actually started my whole side hustle. So this is where I started off as a blog, started the blog, which is Nutrition A to Z now. So that's way over 10 years later. And I called it my side hustle. And the reason why I created that is because I was extremely frustrated with the amount of misinformation that was out there. So my whole purpose was to help people navigate this really complicated world of nutrition. And throughout, let's say, months or years of starting it, I started to get, certain project requests to work on some campaigns, or, private one-to-one clients wanting to have consults with me, etc. So that kind of opened up this whole field of, I could potentially do this. It's actually what I've always wanted, but you have to go through all the hardships and all the learnings to get to where I am today. So fast forward, here I am today after all the clinical work and all this journey, based in Switzerland now, the private practice. And we cater to clients literally all over the world, from the UK, still the Middle East. We do have clients in Australia. And my main areas, obviously, of specialty is digestive health and disease, sports nutrition and eating disorders, as well as corporate health. So based in Switzerland. So I'm not going anywhere now.
Yeah. The funny thing is also, like, although we live really close in terms of like people listen to this podcast all over the world, we have never met because we started working together during the pandemic.
Exactly.
We have always been meeting online, which I don't know, it's funny. But anyway, like we started talking about like also how, like you said, like we have to go through all the hardships to kind of like figure out what we want to do with our businesses, how we want to shape them. And we learn that we have to kind of like trust more on what we want instead of following someone else's blueprint.
Absolutely.
And really like how we can lead with our knowing or with our gut, right? Like how we can make it feel like good for us. I've been through that myself, and you probably can relate also with the burnout, right? Like when you push through things you believe you should do, but you're not really like, do I really want to do this? There's no joy in it whatsoever. You feel like you're pushing through. I'm really want to use this conversation to kind of like talk to you about like physiological effects like of us
pushing through, right? Like the effect on our body, on our gut, on our mind.
Yeah. So I think I like to use myself as an example because I've had, let's say, 2 burnouts, and the first one started at 25. So at 25, this is where I got diagnosed with irritable bowel syndrome, IBS.
Yeah.
And for those who don't know what IBS is, or irritable bowel syndrome, is simply it's a syndrome. So it's a collection of symptoms that simply describe or are a result of a glitch that occurs between how your mind and your gut communicate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So back in the day, or a lot of people refer to IBS as a functional gut disorder, but now we've renamed this whole group of conditions to disorders of the gut-brain axis, so disorders of how your gut and your brain communicate. Back in the day, the reason why they've actually renamed this is because people used to just throw the diagnosis of IBS left, right, and center, and it kind of undermined.
Okay, so when there was nothing else, it was just IBS.
Exactly,
okay.
But it also undermined the seriousness of it, because people would, a doctor would just say, "Oh, it's all in your head." Actually, yes, it is all in my head, but what do I do? What do I do?
Yeah, but because like you have, I mean, I know it. I mean, I have IBS too. Like you have pretty, like
real symptoms
that are not just in your head.
So pushing through. So during that period, my biggest symptoms were obviously my gut. I was going to the loo, so I was having diarrhea about 10 to 12 times a day, running back and forth to the loo. It impacts your quality of life. I was scared of eating out. I had sleep issues, lack of energy. It was just go, go, go. So my day would start at 7 o'clock in the morning, because he had to make it for rounds at 7:30 at the hospital. And then sometimes my day just had no end, and I would finish by 9 o'clock at night. And by the time I get back home, I'm absolutely exhausted. And the last thing I want to do is I just needed to sleep. But then I would find it very difficult to fall back asleep. So this basically continued for about 6 months, where we're just trying to figure out, I mean, to come to that diagnosis of IBS, you have to rule out all the nasties, or like rule out more serious conditions.
Which makes sense.
Absolutely. So we've had to go through these whole, bunch of tests and so on. And then when they just could not find anything, and I've done the scopes, the endoscopies, I remember going to my dad at one point, and he was like, "Look, you're a dietitian, figure yourself out. You can find the answers." And yeah, I did. So I'm doing a lot of research, and not, again, we're still I'm not going to say we're still scratching the surface, but I think we're only starting to see how the mind, or how powerful the mind is when it comes to the physiological impact things like stress would have on our body.
Yeah.
So stress is one of the triggers of IBS. And also what's really interesting to see is a lot of people with depression or anxiety, IBS is, tends to happen or occur in parallel to that too. So there's a huge
link between
the gut and the mind there, using IBS as an example. Now, when it comes to dealing with things like IBS, addressing the mind pillar is pivotal. And this is what I had to do. So I started, I've dealt with nutrition, and I figured out what my triggers were. I was able to, banish the fear of eating out. I was able to refine my balance again and not have to run to the loo 10 to 12 times a day. When it came to movement, I figured out forms of movement that I enjoyed. And we'll also talk about maybe movement down the line, but also I don't call it exercise anymore. And then the sleep was very important, but I was maybe back then at 25, you're not.
You don't need as much sleep.
You don't need as much, and you can really survive on 3 to 4 hours of it, totally fine.
Yeah, safe.
But even when it came to the mind, I had to address that in different forms of therapy, etc. So that combination of things, everything started to kind of look really, really well and promising. And then fast forward to 2018, I had another burnout. And well, it manifested very differently, where I started having panic attacks.
Oh.
Now, the reason why I'm also mentioning this is because this whole thing of pushing through, and even, I was going to say, the definition of what success is, maybe how we've been programmed to define what success is for us when it comes to whether it's you're self-employed or a business owner, is very damaging. I mean, here I am, two burnouts later. So 2018, I had my son in 2016. And the reason why I say these are pivotal moments because 2016 is when I decided to have my own private practice. So I was 3 months pregnant when I actually opened up my practice here in Switzerland. Thinking about it then, I'm like, what the hell were we thinking?
Yeah. Same. I was kind of like restructuring my business and I joined a business mastermind while I was pregnant and then while I gave birth. And I was just like, yeah, I don't know. Now it really didn't. Now looking back, that was not a smart idea.
No, but you know what? And this is maybe when it comes to like, is there actually a right time? Is there, obviously it has to be strategic and somehow calculated. But yeah, so 3 months pregnant, starting off my own practice. So when Phoenix was born, I'm not gonna say there was a sense of urgency to get back into it, but there was. I just gave birth to two things, my son, but also my baby or I'm not gonna say my business, but a physical practice that needs to build up. So there was this urgency to get back into things. And the kind of person that I'm going to say not now I am, but I was this perfectionist or this insatiable thirst to pursue different things. I always needed to feel busy.
And high achieving, for sure.
Very high. Again, it is a double-edged sword, but
yes,
that was a recipe for disaster, I would say, because come 2018, so Phoenix was 2. Not only did I, try to grow the practice, but also I decided to go back to studying because why not? So I decided to enroll.
You're a new mom. You have loads of time.
Exactly. So I decided to pursue another degree, which was a sports nutrition as part of the International Olympic Committee's program. And then I didn't realize that I was pushed over. I was, trying to keep my head above water. So it all started to manifest in panic attacks. And I've never experienced that before. I actually thought it was my asthma playing up. And I went from doctor to doctor, trying to figure out, hold on, what is going on? Went even for, how do you say? I went and even saw a pulmonologist. So just to check, is it actually my asthma? Long story short, they were like, you're totally fine. You're fine. It's just stress. It's probably you're under stress. I was like, this is, you're undermining this whole thing. It's not just stress.
Yeah. I don't know how many times I heard like, just do some yoga. Well,
no,
thanks, but no.
no, that hasn't. So, I mean, again, luckily because I was very well connected when it came to therapists and because I've experienced it in the past, I didn't kind of delay things and I took action. I took a step back from work. I went back into therapy and I was in therapy, weekly therapy sessions, and I'm still in therapy, let's say 4 or 5 years later. And it was one of the best things that I've done. And I think through therapy, I started to redefine what success means to me. Through therapy, I really became extremely connected to my own body cues. I think what tends to happen with this whole push through or, soldier on mentality is that we become completely disconnected. And going back to the physiological side of things, these are real examples of how stress or chronic stress or extreme stress and anxiety can just push us over the edge and manifest in all these different symptoms, whether your gut becomes affected, whether your breathing becomes affected. And I think, if we have to look at the physiology of it all, the biology of it all, this is the, when part of your nervous system, this fight or flight response is constantly on edge, constantly activated. Back in the day, we always use the we used to use the example that the system is activated when we're trying to run away from any,
there's a bear, run.
Exactly. But for us, this becomes triggered when it comes to day-to-day things like receiving certain emails or certain conversations that you have on business.
Yeah, or you have like your phone bleeping the entire time and you see like, oh, WhatsApp from email from social media. Yeah.
So I remember reading somewhere that we're actually biologically not made for our current environment, for our current society. Our bodies are processing so much information day in and day out. So the biggest learnings were to start listening. I think to be very much connected understanding my red flags. So I actually knew what my red flags were, and I became way more connected. But this is where therapy came in. I was able to create all these tools and learn all these tools and skills to be very mindful of when I'm able to pursue certain things and when I'm able to kind of step back.
How do red flags show up for you?
Stomach.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Stomach, migraines, tension, headaches, not being able to sleep. These, as I said, that gut feeling when I know something's not right, I'm very more sensitive to that. I know that I retain a lot of stress in my jaws, for example. The jaw, is it tense? Is it relaxed? Tension headaches. So my neck and my shoulders, are they too scrunched up closer to my ears? Are they, nice and low? And then one thing that I had to put into practice and that actually has helped not only myself, but almost all my clients suffering with gut problems is belly breathing. Something so simple, we call it diaphragmatic breathing. But this is actually one of the easiest ways to just reconnect that the whole kind of gut mind connection is through belly breathing, because even the science shows that that can reduce your heart rate, that can reduce blood pressure.
Yeah, it just starts regulating your entire nervous system.
Exactly. And this is also, it taps into the other part, the other, we call the parasympathetic nervous system, or is your rest and digest. So how to activate that even more. So just the act of breathing or belly breathing, which we tend to forget as adults, especially in this current society, which is extremely fast paced and soldiering on and pushing through is the cornerstone. We become shallow breathers. So I think for me, what was one of these pivotal moments after the second burnout is realizing or reassessing, okay, what does success look like for me, or how do I want to run my business? And I didn't realize that actually it's not about pushing through or pursuing, it's taking a step back. So I, by taking a step back and being strategic with my time and my energy, and I don't have to be crazy busy to be successful. This is where success happened.
It's actually quite the opposite, right?
Absolutely.
But it's interesting, right? That's mostly because most of us are still employed or have past experience of being employed where you're getting paid for your time. Yeah. So we have this link of, I get paid for my hours, and not really for the value I create or the output or whatever, just for 60 minutes, 42 hours, whatever. Yeah. So it's kind of like the more because we know that, we kind of like, our head goes, okay, so the more I work, the more I earn.
But it doesn't go, but even if you are employed, I mean, one thing that we've seen, especially with the pandemic, is people found it very difficult to create boundaries. Creating boundaries when it came to this whole, so-called work-life balance. I mean, you're working from home.
Well, what's
your life, exactly. Your life and your work just merged into one.
Yeah, I always refer to work-life blend because it's balancing. I don't know.
To be honest with you, again, even this whole work-life balance, I'm not going to say it's a delusion, but I feel like you will need to read.
It's a mirage.
You need to redefine what balance means to you, depending on what you are currently going through in life and work.
What's the season you're in? And
exactly. And this is another thing that I've learned as well. So this whole pursuit of work-life balance, and this whole also another thing that society sort of pounds into us is, do you want, having it all? Can you have it all? And maybe that was also my downfall, is wanting it all. But it was like, you know what? No, I don't have to do it all. And I don't want to do it all anymore.
And actually, like, do you actually want to have it all? Like, that's the thing, right? Like, do you actually want to have it all? Or is it like, I'm actually quite happy with the good enough.
Yeah.
And for this season, that's good enough.
Exactly.
And maybe, I don't know, when the kids are older or when you feel better physically, whatever, you can reevaluate your goals and your desires and be like, yeah, actually, I feel like I want to try for something bigger.
I personally now believe that you can have it all, but not all at the same time. So you just need to be strategic. Again, and this is why I always say I'm very strategic with my time, because people ask me, like, how do you do it all? I was like, no, you know what? I don't do it all.
You just finished a book manuscript. So I'm like, and you have 2 little kids. So I'm like, well, Sandra, how do you do it all?
It is asking for help. I was going to say, and I'm probably privileged from that perspective, is just having the help and support around, knowing what to delegate and when to delegate, because of, you know, in the past, I just wanted to do it all. And I knew that was impossible. And that was my
Yeah, which I would say being able to delegate.
No. And I had to learn. Again, I had to learn.
It doesn't come easy to people who've been conditioned as women, right? Like we're like, oh, I have to do it my own. I have to soldier on.
Being the perfect mom, being the perfect partner, being the perfect business owner, being and again, that was my downfall. And I learned, you know, I am perfectly imperfect, and that's good enough. But going back to this whole wanting it all, as I said, am I, you know, if I had to speak about my own personal experiences when it comes to, let's say, this specific business, am I ticking off all the boxes that I've set myself to achieve? Absolutely. But it's been a journey. It's definitely been a journey. It's definitely come at certain expenses. Again, you do learn the hard way.
Yeah, that's always sometimes say the Scenic route hit me over the head repeatedly. Like, slow down, god damn it, woman. Yeah.
How else are we going to learn?
I don't know. I really admire. I mean, I know one or two blessed people who just, I don't know, already have, even when they were 20, I know them for a long time. Even then, they had this scenic route, let's call it scenic route approach. They were just blessed with that wisdom. Yeah. I'm like, that's amazing. And then the big majority of us, we have to learn, not once, maybe twice.
3 times.
3 times? But you didn't burn out 3 times, though.
No, it was 2. But I think, as I said, what I'm learning, maybe the 3rd time, and maybe it's probably this year, was another hard learning, is taking on too much. But I am that type of person. I think I'm not going to say my mind needs to constantly be stimulated, but when is it enough? I think I'm learning that it's okay. You know, it's okay to do 2 things. It's okay, and that's it. That is good enough. And I'm learning that. But I would say, in terms of burnouts, yep, that was luckily, you know, a hard lesson learned. But I'm very more intuitive when it comes to what works for me, what works for my
knowing
business.
The telltale signs of like, ooh,
absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I remember I burned out at, I don't know, what was it, 27 or so, I think, 28, give or take. And I didn't. I don't know. It's easier after you've experienced one burnout, because you're kind of like, oh, telltale signs. Because I remember the first burnout, I didn't know I was burning out or how bad it was until like everything kind of like imploded, and just like, oh, okay, it's okay. I really, okay, bad.
Yeah.
So there's actually a lot to learn also from those times where we feel deeply discouraged and afraid and anxious and shame also, right? Because there's always so much shame attached to burnout. Like, oh, you're not strong enough. You're not meant for this, whatever, right? Like,
as if it's a sign of weakness, basically. But actually, I think it's one thing. I think, again, at the end of the day, I mean, anyone recovering from a burnout, and not that I want to label it as a burnout, because also now the whole term burnout is being used so loosely, and I know it is becoming, which is great. I mean, people are raising awareness about it, but we don't even have a strict medical definition for it. I think, as I said, it's just learning your warning signs. And what I wanted to say, it's when it comes to recovering from a burnout, what you try to work towards is stress resilience. You're not going to take the stress out of your life. There's no, we wish we could, but this is not reality.
Yeah, but ultimately there are things that you cannot control, right? Like,
exactly.
I mean, it can go everything been well, and then I don't know, you get a call from daycare that you have to pick up your kid. Like, I don't know, there's always something, right? It's how do you become more stress resilient?
Exactly. It's how do you cope? And I feel like this whole journey towards recovery is really about learning how to cope. And that's the same thing when we're looking at from a nutritional or a lifestyle perspective as well. The same things apply. You know, for me, I always, and you would know this, I always ask my clients to reflect about what they want their 4 pillars to look like, mind, movement, nutrition, and sleep, because I strongly feel that they're all interconnected. If one is off, it's a domino effect. All the other 3 are going to be off. So how do you build a template for your life where somehow all these 4 are in sync? And you need to start working towards the template that you create for yourself based on this 4-pillar approach. And for me, actually, this is what I'm not going to say keeps me sane, but keeps me more balanced, or helps me understand, okay, which pillar needs a little bit more work this time around.
Yeah, it just helps you, I don't know, classify and structure and be like, oh, actually, maybe, have I been paying attention to sleeping or eating or stimulation, joy, fun, play?
So I started to, and another thing that also was extremely important as part of this whole journey is having more fun in our lives. I think, again, it's just
yes.
Which is,
what was the last fun thing you did?
The last fun thing I did, gosh. I know this is really bad.
Gotcha.
But gotcha. So one of the things that I set for myself this year to do is fun. And for me, fun means dancing. And I went to what was it? The last music festival that was here. I think it was Open Air.
That was like August. That's too long ago for something fun.
Full disclosure, I am sleep deprived because my kids have been sick the last few days.
I know, it's hard.
But again, it's even just finding fun in your day-to-day life. So I mean, the last fun thing we did was last night. We were just dancing all over the house. And after dinner, my son and my daughter were just running around and just being silly and just blasting the music. And I feel like doing more of these little things is what we should focus on rather than aim for big fun, like, going to a music festival. I think
also the clients I work with, they're kind of like always waiting for their eat, pray, love moment, I call it, right? Like the time when I have like 6 months of an empty schedule and I do the whole kind of like eat, pray, love thing. And I'm like, that's awesome. But like, when's that gonna happen? Like when the kids leave house, like
when they're 18.
Yeah, exactly. So like, how does eat, pray, love look like in your everyday life, in your schedule? And it's not, I don't know, you deserve more time than, I don't know, the times when you sit in the tram or in the car when you just, I don't know, crying because you just dropped your kids off, or you're sitting on the toilet for longer because it's your time.
which is funny because again, a lot of my clients as well, I mean, I always tell them, don't be on the loo for more than 5 to 10 minutes max. We're like,
I know, but it's actually the time I have to myself. It's so bad. I know. It's not good for, I don't know, for your entire gut, for hemorrhoids, for everything. But it's like,
it's the only me time. It is again, I mean,
I once saw this awesome meme. You're a parent when, and it was just a picture of like 2 naked legs with like these red elbow marks.
I've had those.
And I'm like, got it. Yep. You're a parent, because that means you have been sitting on the loo on your phone for 15 minutes.
We've all been there. And this just goes to going back, it's really not about these grand gestures that you find those little things in your day-to-day life. I know it's easier said than done, but this is also something, it's not impossible. I mean, today, what I set myself, my happy things to do or fun things to do will be to, walk, and, I've got a longer break today. So I just want to go for a quick walk because the weather's going to be nice. I want to buy myself some flowers and I want to read a chapter in one of the books. So again, it's these 3, 3 is my magic number, but I always say set 3 things in your day for, one can be for yourself, one can, if people want to go by to-do lists, but this is another thing. Again, let's not talk about to-do lists because they can also trigger your fight or flight response. But set 3 things a day
that are just for the sake of it,
exactly,
and not for, I do this so that.
And they don't have to be grand. They just need to be teeny tiny things that make you happy.
Yeah, it's so true, right? Like, and even like when you do bigger things, like I just had, like, as an example, friend and I, we ordered tickets to see Lizzo in Zurich next year. She's come to play. So 100% that bitch that goes to see Lizzo. And today I got a confirmation from the postal service that the tickets have been shipped. And I'm like, ooh, kind of like all that. It reminded me of like how we did an impromptu dance party because we ordered tickets. And it's just like kind of like it was a kind of like a little glimmer that reignited and reminded me of the joy. So it can also be those little things, being mindful of that.
But again, we're so focused on the bigger things. We're completely, again, it's just that disconnect of, do these little things count, or we undermine all these little things?
Yeah. And I mean, I get it, right? Like there's so much like economical theory, psychological theory of rather have one good thing now than two good things later or so.
Yeah.
How do we navigate this? Like our desire or our need for instant gratification that has been cultivated through our media use, for sure.
Yeah.
How do we navigate our like fabricated desire, let's call it fabricated desire, for immediate gratification, and doing teeny tiny steps that we know will accumulate for a long-term benefit? How do we navigate this?
Oh, I don't have the answer because I'm still learning.
Well, I mean, I also don't know, but we can talk about this, right? Like, because I know it from myself. It's so hard that you're like, this makes me feel good now, but I know it might not be good for my health, my well-being, whatever, but that's tomorrow or in a week or in a month, or whenever I feel the consequences of the actions I took today. Do we shift our mindset?
Look, it's definitely going to be a combination of different things. I think mindset is definitely, a big part of it, but also just understanding, maybe placing a focus on the consequences even more. So like, even, this is going to be good for this specific moment, but it's not going to be good for later. Or if it's just a one-off, fine, not overthinking. But I think it just comes down to looking at what sort of habits that provide you with this instant gratification that's short-lived, weighing up the pros and cons of it. If it's a habit that or if it's something that you end up doing a bit more frequently, that might have, how do you say, more negative I really don't like to use that term negative so much, but
yeah,
that is not conducive to your health in the long run, mental health being a part of it too. Again, I mean, if you want to look at it again as a dietitian, one of the easiest examples to use is comfort eating or emotional eating. And this is, there is a fine line or I would say, comfort eating or emotional eating is a double-edged sword, because of course certain foods are going to be comforting and nostalgic, and who doesn't, like a specific meal that reminds, exactly.
Yeah.
But if that is your only way to cope, for example, if that is your learned habit, if it's your only way to cope with that, or your only way to cope with comfort or cope with stress or cope with sadness or whatever it is that you're experiencing, then it becomes problematic. Again, I don't know if that answers the example that creates that resemblance to what we want to talk about. But as I said,
no, I do think so, right? Because it's always kind of like shifting the question to why, right? Like, why do I need that? Like, why do I need a comfort food today? Or even in business, why do I feel I need to have Instagram? Or why do I feel I need to have a certain amount of revenue? Like, it's always kind of like trying to, and that's really hard to do on your own. So that's why it's always kind of like helpful to have someone on the outside reflecting it with you.
Yeah.
But actually looking at, hey, why am I doing the things, right? And coming from a place of, I try my best. I always do the best I can. And so it's also a thing of like, okay, I had the comfort food. It's okay. I'm fine.
Yeah.
And not crapping on yourself for it.
No, but also, again, that takes skill and that takes practice and support from other people, purely because I don't want, for example, my clients to invest so much energy, I'm going to say wasted, on this feelings of guilt and shame that comes with these certain actions. I would say, right, it happened, keep calm and carry on.
There's nothing motivating in shame or guilt. No. Like, if that would work, there would be no diet industry, because we would all be like skinny.
It doesn't work at all.
I think it's really a good learning to actually, if you're feeling unhappy with certain things that manifest in your life, whether that be poor sleep, poor diet, or headache, or digestion problems, or not enough revenue in your business, or whatever it is, right? Like looking at, okay, what do I do? Why do I do it? And can I do things differently?
I think that's a very good way to put it.
And can I move forward without crapping on myself? And I mean, that's universal, right? It's diet, it's business.
But you know what? I feel like you need support. You need people around you. So I have my business coach or a mentor. She has witnessed, she's been with me throughout my whole career. She's the one that I had my first job with her, and she's been with me throughout this whole process. I have my therapist. I have my, close set of friends, or I would say, as cliche as it sounds, I have my tribe who are more or less in that same boat that truly understand these, the hardships that I would go through, whether it's a business owner or as a mom, or how to, I hate the whole juggle, but how to juggle things, or how to navigate this whole area, or trying to, how do I redefine what balance means to me right now? Because I just cannot see it. I think this is also very important to have if you do want to work towards, let's say, defining what success means to you from a professional perspective and a personal perspective as well.
100% agree. So then tell me, if people would like to have your support, how can they do that? Where can people find you online?
Well, they can find me by the website. I was gonna say,
just Google me. I'm
Googleable.
I'm famous.
Well, let's wait till the book comes out. But so I'm reachable on Instagram. It's Nutrition A to Z by Sandra Mikhail. The website is nutrition-az.com. So you can reach us there. And just a little story, I actually hate the name Nutrition A to Z, speaking about branding, but it's something that stuck. It was the name of the blog. So that was over 10 years ago now, 11 or 12 years ago. It's 12 years ago now.
Yeah.
And the name came about wanting to cover everything when it comes, from A to Z. But exactly.
Where holistic wasn't a buzzword.
Let's not talk about that word. But covering A to Z, all aspects of nutrition. And 12 years on, I'm still stuck with that name because this is how people know me by, or this is how the brand's been identified. But yeah, so it's Nutrition A to Z, and I am based here in Zurich, Switzerland. But yeah, you can reach out. I don't bite. I am happy to help you out, especially when it comes to poo talk. I definitely, as people say, I make poo talk salon chic. That's like the catchphrase.
Very en fashion, very on style. Yeah, and you're also offering, for everyone listening, you also offer 10% discount on your top selling programs. We're going to link them in the show notes. So that's a really good way of like doing something different if you feel called.
Absolutely. And I mean, with these two programs, well, one, I know you've joined one is really about working with your body and not against it, and understanding what works for you, and creating, even when it comes to this whole world of digestive health and so on, it is so confusing, and it is a rabbit hole of misinformation.
Yes. Especially on TikTok.
I'm not on TikTok, and I don't plan to be. So I'm
I actually always said I'm too old for TikTok, but I must say I find it quite, now that I've been on it for a while, and the algorithm kind of like gets what I like. I actually I don't know, dare I say it? I actually do enjoy TikTok.
I don't even want to go there. I'm still struggling with Instagram. I have this love-hate relationship.
The start was bad.
I have a love-hate
because it was giving me all these things into my feed where I'm like, no, dear God, no. But hey, I always have one last question, because I'm curious and always need new material. What book are you currently reading?
I am a sucker for all things light, mushy, and lovey-dovey novels. So right now I'm reading...
there's always a space for that.
Reading The Return by Nicholas Sparks.
Okay, that's checks all the mushy categories.
So he's a writer of The Notebook. But you know what? But even when it comes to that, I think what's really important is when it comes to reading, I need something light, fluffy, and fun and easy to read.
Yeah. And it should be something warm, funny, uplifting. I don't know, something light and fun. And
so there you go. That's what I'm reading now.
Very good. Very good. I also just saw that Jenny Colgan has a new book, The Christmas Bookshop. So I know what I'm going to order next.
Amazing.
Oh, it's actually out today on 27th of October.
Well, there you go. Place your order.
There you go. Yes. Hey, Sandra, thank you so much for joining me on the Scenic Route podcast. It has been a blast. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
Yay.
Thank you so much for listening to the Scenic Route podcast. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode and that you can take something from it that feels right to you. I'd be so grateful if you could share the Scenic Route podcast with others. Head over to scenicroutepodcast.com to check out all the links and resources from today's episode. Oh, and while you're there, don't forget to download my free email course, Intuitive Branding Invitation, to teach you how you can successfully tune into your own brand frequency and rediscover your brand's unique gifts, strengths, and talents. So thanks again. Talk soon.